Daniel Harper stepped out of the glass elevator on the 23rd floor of Northvale Technologies, his borrowed tie slightly crooked despite 3 attempts to fix it that morning. The reception area stretched before him like a museum of success he'd never belonged to. White leather chairs that probably cost more than his monthly rent, abstract art that made no sense, and a receptionist whose manicured nails clicked against a keyboard worth more than his laptop. He was 42 and looked it. The suit jacket had belonged to his late wife's father, altered twice to fit his narrower shoulders. The sleeves were still a fraction too long. No degree hung on any wall with his name. No LinkedIn profile boasted connections to anyone who mattered. Just a single father who'd taught himself to code at kitchen tables between bedtime stories and broken washing machines. They would look at him like a mistake. But when the company's $1 million system crashed in the middle of his interview, surrounded by PhDs and directors who'd built their careers on credentials he'd never have, only Daniel saw the fatal flaw in seconds. And that moment forced an entire building to listen to a man they'd just dismissed. Part 2. Morning Promises. 6 hours earlier, Daniel had knelt beside Mia's bed, watching his 7-year-old daughter sleep with her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. The apartment was quiet, except for the refrigerator's hum and the distant rumble of morning traffic on Fletcher Avenue. Dawn light filtered through the thin curtains, touching her face with gold. He'd laid out her clothes the night before. The blue dress with yellow flowers she loved, clean socks without holes, her only pair of shoes that still fit properly. Mrs. Chen from 4B would pick her up for school again. 3rd time this week. 4th, if you counted last Tuesday when the bus broke down and Daniel had been 30 miles away at a hardware store consultation. Daddy? Mia's voice was small, still heavy with sleep. Hey, Bug. She blinked at him, her mother's brown eyes in her small face. Sarah had been gone 3 years, but sometimes the resemblance hit Daniel like a physical thing. Is today the big interview? Yeah. The tech company downtown. The one with the tall building? That's the one. Mia sat up, clutching her rabbit, Mr. Whiskers, named when she was 4 and still treated with the solemnity of a trusted advisor. Will they give you the job? The question landed in his chest, like it always did, hope, mixed with fear, mixed with the weight of every bill on the kitchen counter. The rent notice, the overdue electric, the car insurance he'd been stretching out month by month. I don't know, sweetheart, but I'm going to try my best. Miss Peterson says trying your best is what matters. Miss Peterson is very smart. He kissed her forehead, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. Maybe today things get a little easier, okay? She nodded, but her eyes held that careful look children develop when they've learned not to expect too much. Daniel had seen that look more often lately. Every time the landlord knocked, every time he said no to the toy store, every time he told her they couldn't afford the class trip to the science museum, every time he picked up extra hours at the computer repair shop and missed another school event, that look broke his heart in slow motion, day after day. He made her breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, the bread slightly stale but still good, and walked her to Mrs. Chen's door. The hallway smelled like coffee and someone's burnt bacon, paint peeled in long strips near the ceiling. Good luck, Mr. Harper, Mrs. Chen said, taking Mia's hand. The elderly woman's kindness was constant, even when he'd had to ask her to wait for last month's babysitting payment. Even when he'd shown up at her door at midnight because the landlord had threatened eviction and he needed someone to watch Mia while he picked up an emergency overnight repair job. Thank you. I'll pick her up by 6. Take your time. You go show them what you can do. The bus ride downtown took 40 minutes. Daniel sat by the window and reviewed his portfolio on his phone, small projects, local businesses. Nothing impressive by tech industry standards. An inventory system for Greenfield hardware store that had reduced their processing time by half. A scheduling platform for Turner Medical Clinic that the doctors actually liked using. A custom database for the public library that let them track books across 3 branches. Simple, functional work that solved real problems for real people. Nothing that would impress Northvale Technologies, one of the fastest-growing tech firms in the region. Nothing that would make them overlook the gaps in his resume, the lack of formal education, the years spent doing whatever paid the bills while raising a daughter alone. The building rose 37 floors above the financial district, all glass and steel ambition. Daniel's reflection in the lobby doors looked tired lines around his eyes, hair that needed cutting, a suit that had been out of style when Sarah's father wore it 15 years ago. He straightened his tie one more time and pushed through. The lobby was all marble and chrome. Security guards in crisp uniforms. A directory listing companies Daniel had only read about in news articles. The elevator had a mirror, and he avoided looking at himself as it rose, counting floors, breathing carefully. 23. The doors opened onto corporate perfection. The conference room on 23 had a view of the entire city. Daniel could see the neighborhood where his apartment sat, small and distant and somehow comforting. At least from up here, the broken sidewalks and chain-link fences looked almost picturesque. 3 people waited at the long mahogany table. Elaine Brooks, HR director, mid-50s with sharp eyes behind designer frames and a sharper navy suit. She smiled professionally as Daniel entered, the kind of smile that meant nothing but cost nothing either. Her handshake was firm, practiced. Mr. Harper, thank you for coming in. Thank you for the opportunity. Andrew Collins, Chief Technology Officer, late 40s, already checking his phone even as he shook Daniel's hand with his other. His watch caught the light, Swiss, expensive, the kind that cost more than Daniel made in 6 months. He wore his success casually, like an old t-shirt. Good to meet you. Dr. Richard Moore, Chief Software Architect, early 60s, with silver hair and a computer science PhD from Stanford, framed on the wall behind him, right next to certifications from Microsoft and Amazon Web Services. He didn't stand. He nodded from his chair, eyes already dismissive. The kind of dismissal that came from years of knowing exactly where he stood in the hierarchy of competence. Mr. Harper. Elaine gestured to the chair across from them. 3 against 1. The table felt very wide. Daniel sat, placing his portfolio folder carefully on the polished wood. He'd printed everything last night at the library. 20 cents per page he could barely afford. Elaine glanced at his resume. 1 page, sparse, too much white space. Yes, ma'am. Started about 8 years ago. 8 years. Andrew looked up from his phone, actually focused on Daniel now. And before that, I worked construction. Then retail management. When my wife got sick, I needed something with more flexible hours. Started learning to code in the evenings. No formal education in computer science? Dr. Moore's voice carried the faint surprise of someone who'd never considered there might be another path. No, sir. Family circumstances made college difficult. I learned through online courses, documentation, practice, built projects until I understood the principles. Dr. Moore leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking softly. We're hiring for a senior systems analyst position, Mr. Harper. Most candidates have master's degrees, years at major tech firms. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Daniel kept his voice level, professional. I understand the position is competitive. I believe practical experience solving real-world problems has value alongside formal education. Tell us about your most complex project, Elaine said, her tone suggesting she was going through the motions now, already writing the rejection email in her head. I built an integrated management system for Patterson manufacturing, inventory tracking, order processing, employee scheduling, customer relationship management. They had 3 separate legacy systems that didn't communicate. Data had to be entered manually in multiple places. Reports took days to generate. I created a unified platform that reduced their processing time by 60% and eliminated most data entry errors. Patterson Manufacturing. Andrew's tone suggested he'd never heard of them. Annual revenue? About 12 million. We manage systems for clients with billion-dollar valuations, Mr. Harper. The scale is different. He said it kindly, almost apologetically. But the message was clear. You're out of your depth. The principles are the same, Daniel said quietly. Data integrity, efficient architecture, user-focused design. The numbers might be bigger, but the problems are similar. Dr. Moore picked up a pen, tapping it against his notepad in a rhythm that suggested impatience. You mention in your application that you specialize in troubleshooting system failures. What's your methodology? Finally, a technical question. Daniel straightened slightly. Start with the error logs, trace backwards through the execution path, isolate variables, test hypotheses systematically. Most failures aren't random, they're cascading effects from a single point of weakness. Find that point, you can predict how the failure will spread and where to intervene. Textbook answer, Dr. Moore said dismissively. Any competent technician knows that. The words stung precisely because they were designed to. Daniel said nothing. What could he say? That he'd learned it the hard way, fixing systems at 2 a.m. while Mia slept, teaching himself from error messages and Stack Overflow posts? That his textbook had been failure after failure until he understood the patterns. The room went quiet. Elaine checked her watch, a subtle gesture, but Daniel saw it. Andrew had returned to his phone. Dr. Moore was writing something in his notes, probably insufficient qualifications in whatever professional language HR required. Mr. Harper, Elaine said carefully, I think we need to be honest about expectations. This position requires someone who can work with our existing team, who speaks the language of enterprise-level development, who has credentials our clients will respect, someone who's been in the trenches at major tech companies, who understands the pressures of high-stakes deployments. I'm not sure. The lights flickered. All three of their phones buzzed simultaneously, a discordant chorus of alerts. Andrew looked at his screen and went pale. We need to pause this. The conference room door burst open. A young woman in a Northvale polo shirt stood there, breathless, her professional composure cracking around the edges. Mr. Collins, Dr. Moore, you need to come to the operations center. Now. We're in the middle of, Elaine started. Project Orion just failed. Complete system crash. The Westbridge presentation is in 90 minutes. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Andrew was already standing, his phone pressed to his ear. Dr. Moore's face had gone rigid, the kind of rigid that came from professional disaster unfolding in real time. What do you mean, complete crash? Dr. Moore demanded. Everything. Authentication, database queries, the entire API layer. The system is generating thousands of errors per minute. Elaine looked at Daniel with an expression somewhere between apologetic and annoyed, like a hostess whose dinner party had just been interrupted by a kitchen fire. I'm sorry. We'll have to reschedule. Please see yourself. But they were already gone, leaving their coffee cups and Daniel's resume scattered on the table like debris. Through the glass wall, Daniel could see people hurrying past in that particular half-run of professionals, trying not to look panicked. Phones rang in overlapping sequences. Voices rose in pitch. The calm corporate atmosphere had shifted into something urgent and afraid. He stood, gathering his folder. This was it. Another failed interview. Another evening telling Mia he'd tried his best. Another week watching the bank account number get smaller while the bills stayed the same size. Another month of rice and beans and explaining why they couldn't afford new shoes yet. The familiar weight of failure settled on his shoulders. Then he saw the screen in the operations center across the hall. Lines of red text scrolling faster than anyone could read. Error messages compounding, multiplying like bacteria in a petri dish. Through the glass, he could see Dr. Moore pointing at a whiteboard, Andrew on the phone, Elaine trying to coordinate something on her tablet, and at least 5 other people in various states of controlled panic. and Daniel saw it. Not the solution, not yet, but the pattern. The signature of a specific type of failure he'd encountered before at Patterson Manufacturing, when their order system had created a feedback loop that nearly corrupted their entire database. He'd been up for 36 hours straight fixing that one, learning exactly how cascading failures propagated through integrated systems. He should leave. They'd forgotten about him. This wasn't his problem. He had no authority here, no credentials, no reason to think they'd listen to anything he said, but his feet carried him to the operations center door anyway. The room was chaos-controlled barely by professionalism. 8 people crowded around 3 monitors displaying cascading error logs. The screens looked like something out of a disaster movie. Red text, climbing numbers, graphs with lines going vertical. Everyone talked over everyone else in that particular overlapping cacophony of experts, who all thought they knew the answer. Database integrity check failed on 17 separate tables. Authentication loop hitting the server 200 times per second. Need to isolate the payment processing module before it. Backup systems aren't responding either. Daniel stood in the doorway, unnoticed. On the main monitor, he watched the error count climb. 12,847, 12,923, 13,056. The numbers accelerated with each refresh. "We need to restore from backup," someone said, a woman with red hair and panicked eyes. "Last clean backup was 6 hours ago. We'll lose everything since then." All the morning's development work. All the test data for Westbridge. Better than losing the whole system. Dr. Moore shook his head, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by grim calculation. "The Westbridge demo uses data we generated this morning, custom scenarios to showcase our capabilities. If we restore to the backup, we have nothing to show them. Just promises and apologies. Then, we reschedule the presentation. They gave us 1 presentation slot. They're evaluating 3 vendors. If we're not ready, we're out. That's a $20 million contract." Andrew ran his hand through his hair, standing it on end. "How did this even start? The system was stable this morning. We ran tests, everything checked out. Deploy must have introduced a conflict somewhere. But we can't trace it with everything failing at once. It's like trying to find a spark in a forest fire." Daniel cleared his throat. No one heard him. He tried again, louder. "Excuse me." Elaine turned, surprised to see him still there. Her expression said clearly, "Why are you still here, Mr. Harper? You really need to." "It's a validation cascade," Daniel said. The room went quiet. 8 pairs of eyes turned to him. Dr. Moore looked at him like he'd spoken in a foreign language. "The error pattern. It's not a deploy conflict. Your authentication system is creating a validation loop. Each failed request generates a retry, which generates another validation check, which creates another request. It's exponential growth. That's why the numbers are climbing so fast." "That's not possible," Dr. Moore said flatly, with the certainty of someone who'd designed the system personally. "Our validation architecture has multiple safeguards against exactly that scenario. Timeout limits, retry caps, circuit breakers. We built this system specifically to prevent cascading failures. Unless one of the safeguards failed first," Daniel said carefully. "If the initial timeout threshold got corrupted or misconfigured, the whole chain breaks down. The retry logic keeps trying because it thinks it's within normal parameters. But it's not. It's creating new requests faster than the system can process them." Andrew stepped closer to the monitor, scrolling through the logs with new attention. "The timeout settings are hard-coded in the validation module. They can't just change. Not in the code," Daniel said, "but in the environment variables. If someone updated the deployment configuration and accidentally modified a value misplaced, a decimal point, used the wrong unit of measurement, the hard-coded logic would pull the corrupted value. We don't make those kinds of mistakes," Dr. Moore interrupted, and there was something in his voice now beyond dismissal. Something defensive. "We have protocols, code reviews. Automated testing. This company employs some of the best engineers in the industry. We don't make typos in configuration files. Daniel said nothing. On the screen behind Dr. Moore, the error count passed 15,000. Elaine looked between them, her HR training kicking in to mediate the tension. Even if that's the problem, how would we fix it? You can't fix it while the system is running, Daniel said. The loop feeds itself. Every second that passes, it generates more errors, which trigger more retries, which generate more errors. It's exponential. You need to shut down completely, reset the environment variables to known good values, then restart in isolated modules to confirm the fix before bringing everything back online. Shut down? Andrew's voice rose. We have 73 active clients accessing this system right now. We can't just pull the plug. Their businesses depend on uptime. We have SLAs, legal obligations. You're going to shut down anyway, Daniel said quietly, and something in his tone made everyone stop and listen. In about 15 minutes, when the error count hits critical mass and crashes the entire database. The only question is whether you do it controlled or catastrophic. Controlled shutdown, you might lose some data integrity, but you can manage the restart. Catastrophic crash, you're looking at corruption, possible data loss, recovery time measured in days, not hours. Dr. Moore crossed his arms, the body language of someone digging in. And you know this how, exactly? From your $12 million manufacturing client? The condescension hung in the air like smoke. The other engineers shifted uncomfortably. Daniel met his eyes, keeping his voice level. Yes, exactly from that. Patterson Manufacturing had a similar cascade during a system integration. Custom ordering system, talking to inventory management, talking to shipping logistics. One corrupted timeout value created a feedback loop that nearly destroyed their entire database. I was the one who caught it. The one who convinced them to shut down before it went critical. The principles don't change because the numbers get bigger, Dr. Moore. Math doesn't care about the size of your client list. The door opened. A woman entered late 50s, gray suit that probably cost more than Daniel's car, presence that made everyone unconsciously straighten their posture. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't need to. Victoria Hale, CEO. Daniel recognized her from the company website, from the articles in tech magazines, from the keynote speeches. She'd built Northvale from a 3-person startup to a company with 400 employees and clients across 3 continents. Status, she said. Not a question. A command. Andrew started to explain, words tumbling over each other. Victoria held up one hand. 30 seconds. Can we save the Westbridge presentation, or not? We're working on it, Dr. Moore said. There's a system conflict we're tracing. This gentleman thinks it's a validation cascade. Elaine interrupted, nodding toward Daniel. He says we need to shut down completely. Victoria looked at Daniel properly for the first time. Her gaze was sharp, assessing. The look of someone who'd built a company by reading people accurately. And you are? Daniel Harper. I was. I'm here for a job interview. Her eyebrow raised fractionally. What's your background? Self-taught, small-scale systems, no formal credentials. And you think you've diagnosed in 5 minutes what my team hasn't figured out? The question could have been hostile, but it wasn't. It was genuine curiosity. I think I recognize the pattern, Daniel said. I could be wrong, but the error signature matches something I've seen before, and the math supports it: exponential growth, starting from a single point of failure. Victoria appreciated the honesty. Daniel could see it in the slight relaxation around her eyes. She turned to Dr. Moore. Is he wrong? Impossible to say without deeper analysis. We'd need to examine the environment configurations, trace the deployment history, verify the timeout values across all modules, but shutting down based on speculation from someone with no expertise in enterprise architecture, someone who just walked in off the street, the error count is at 17,000, someone called out. Victoria walked to the monitor, studied it for 10 seconds of absolute silence. Everyone waited. The numbers kept climbing. 17,234. 17,509. 17,721. Mr. Harper, she said without turning around. If we shut down right now, how long to fix and restart? Depends on the system complexity and how modular the architecture is. If it's what I think it is, a simple configuration error, the fix itself takes minutes. Testing and verification before restart. That's the time-consuming part. You need to bring modules online, one at a time. Verify each layer. 45 minutes if everything goes well. Maybe an hour if you hit complications. And if we don't shut down, full crash within 20 minutes. Maybe less. Recovery time. Daniel paused, choosing his words carefully. Unknown. Could be hours if you're lucky. Could be days if the cascade corrupts the core database tables. And there's no guarantee you'd recover all the data. She looked at her watch, simple, elegant, nothing showy. Westbridge arrives in 70 minutes. The room was silent except for the computer fans and someone's nervous breathing and the faint sound of phones ringing in other offices. Shut it down, Victoria said. Dr. Moore stepped forward. Victoria, with all respect, we're trusting a complete stranger who walked in off the street. We're trusting the math, Victoria said calmly. 17,000 errors in 20 minutes. Show me the projection if that continues. Andrew pulled up a graph on the secondary monitor. The line went nearly vertical, numbers exploding toward infinity. The projection showed system failure in 12 minutes. Shut it down, Victoria repeated. Now. Controlled shutdown. Full stop. Mr. Harper, you have 1 hour. If you're right, we'll talk. If you're wrong, you leave, and we never mention this again. Clear? Daniel nodded. Dr. Moore, give him access. Everyone else, prepare for full restart sequence. I want module checklists, verification protocols, everything by the book. Move. The room exploded into motion. They gave Daniel a desk in the corner of the operations center and access to the development environment. Dr. Moore stood over his shoulder like a disapproving teacher. Arms crossed, radiating skepticism and wounded pride. Daniel ignored him. He'd learned long ago that proving yourself was quieter than defending yourself. He pulled up the environment configuration files. Lines of code scrolled past, familiar syntax, the architecture making sense as he traced through it. Good design, actually. Whoever built this system knew what they were doing, which made finding the error harder, not easier. There. Line 247 inches, the production environment config. Session timeout value set to 0.3 milliseconds instead of 300 milliseconds. A single misplaced decimal point. The difference between 300 and .3. Found it, he said quietly. Dr. Moore leaned in, close enough that Daniel could smell his expensive coffee. The architect frowned, reading the line. That shouldn't cause a system-wide failure. The validation layer should catch the error and use the default value. We built in redundancy specifically for this. Unless the default value pulls from the same configuration file instead of being hard-coded, then it just loops back to the corrupted value. The default is hard-coded in the validation module. I designed it myself. Can you check? Dr. Moore was already typing, pulling up the module code on an adjacent monitor. His frown deepened as he scrolled through the logic. His face went from skeptical to confused to something that might have been embarrassed. Someone refactored this, he said slowly. Last month, they made the default configurable to improve flexibility for different deployment environments and accidentally created a single point of failure. I approved that refactor. Dr. Moore's voice was quiet now, the defensiveness gone. I thought it was a good change. More maintainable, more adaptable. It is, Daniel said. In theory, you just need better safeguards around the configuration values. Validation on the validators. The error was fixable in 2 minutes. Change 0.3 back to 300. But that wasn't enough. Daniel spent another 8 minutes checking every other timeout value in the configuration files, making sure there weren't more decimal errors hiding in the code. He found 2 more. Different modules, same problem. Someone had done a find and replace operation and shifted decimal points across multiple files. Here, he said, showing Dr. Moore, and here, same pattern. Jesus. Dr. Moore ran his hand over his face. A single, careless edit almost destroyed everything. The restart took longer modules coming online in careful sequence. Each one verified before the next activated. Daniel walked through the process with the operations team, explaining the logic, making sure they understood not just what to do, but why. A young engineer named Marcus asked questions, good questions, technical questions that showed he actually understood the problem. Daniel answered each one carefully, drawing diagrams on the whiteboard when words weren't enough. At 38 minutes, the system was stable. At 42 minutes, they had test data running through the demo environment. At 55 minutes, everything was ready for Westbridge. Victoria stood in the doorway, watching the green status indicators light up across the monitoring board like Christmas lights. Her expression revealed nothing, but Daniel could feel her attention, sharp and assessing. "Mr. Harper," she said. A word. Her office was on the 35th floor, corner view. Furniture that whispered old money and new power. Bookshelves lined one wall not for show, actually read, with notes sticking out and worn spines. A photo on the desk showed her with 2 teenage kids, all 3 laughing at something off camera. She didn't sit behind the desk. She took one of the chairs by the window and gestured for Daniel to take the other. Equal level. Deliberate choice. "Tell me why you came to this interview," she said. The question caught him off guard. "I need work. I saw the job posting. The salary range would change things for my family. You knew you weren't qualified." On paper. On paper, no. So why waste your time? Why waste ours? Daniel looked out the window at the city. Somewhere down there, Mia was in school, learning about fractions or state capitals or whatever second graders learned, trusting that her father would figure things out. Because sometimes the paper doesn't tell the whole story. And I thought maybe, if I got in the room, someone might see past it. See what I could actually do, not just what my resume said I couldn't. Were you right? He smiled slightly, without humor. No. Your team saw exactly what the paper said. Maybe less. But you stayed anyway. Even after the interview fell apart. You could have left, should have left. Instead, you walked into a crisis that had nothing to do with you. I saw people with a problem I knew how to solve. Seemed wrong to just walk away. Victoria was quiet for a moment, her eyes on the city below. The senior analyst position has been filled. We hired someone last week, Stanford graduate, 5 years at Google. Your interview today was administrative oversight. My assistant should have canceled it. I'm sorry you came all this way for nothing. Daniel's chest tightened. Of course, I understand. However, she leaned forward. I'm creating a new position, junior systems analyst. You'll work under Dr. Moore, supporting the operations team, troubleshooting, optimization, whatever they need. You'll have access to our training programs, professional development courses, mentorship from our senior engineers. In 2 years, if you prove yourself, we'll sponsor your formal certifications, maybe even a degree program if you're interested. Salary is $68,000 to start, with standard benefits package. Daniel couldn't speak. $68,000, more than double what he made now cobbling together freelance work and repair jobs. Health insurance. Dental. A 401k. You'll be on probation for 6 months, Victoria continued, her tone matter of fact. You'll be the least credentialed person in the department. Some people will think you don't belong. You'll have to work harder than everyone around you to prove you do. The work won't be glamorous. A lot of it will be fixing other people's mistakes, documenting systems, the grunt work that keeps everything running. Are you interested? Yes. The word came out rough. He cleared his throat. Yes, absolutely. One condition. Her eyes were sharp now. What happened today stays between us and the people in that operations center. The official story is that our team diagnosed and fixed a system conflict during routine testing. Your role doesn't get mentioned outside this building. I'm not creating a narrative where we needed rescuing by someone off the street. Bad for morale. Bad for client confidence. Bad for the team's reputation. Understood? Daniel understood more than she said. She was protecting him too. If word got out that a job applicant had fixed a critical failure, it would paint a target on his back. Resentment from the engineers who'd missed it. Skepticism from clients who'd wonder about the company's competence. Understood, he said. She stood, extended her hand. Welcome to Northvale Technologies, Mr. Harper. Don't make me regret this. Her grip was firm, confident. Daniel shook her hand and felt something shift in his chest, not triumph, not relief, but something quieter and more solid. Possibility. The future opening up instead of closing down. I won't, he said, and meant it. The next hour was a blur of paperwork. Employee handbook, benefit selections, direct deposit forms, non-disclosure agreements, acceptable use policies. An assistant named Jennifer walked him through everything. Patient and professional, answering his questions without judgment. Health insurance. Daniel chose the mid-tier plan, better than anything he'd had since Sarah was alive. Dental coverage for Mia. Vision. The words on the forms felt almost foreign. Employer contribution, preventive care, annual maximum, life insurance. He'd be worth more dead than alive again, which was oddly comforting. At least Mia would be protected. Retirement account. He could contribute up to 6% and Northvale would match it. Free money. Daniel did the math in his head at $68,000. 6% was. He could actually afford it. Still have enough for rent, for food, for Mia's clothes and school supplies. The security badge photo was terrible. Daniel looked exhausted, slightly stunned, like someone who'd just survived something. The tech took 3 tries before getting one where his eyes were fully open. Don't worry, she said cheerfully. Everyone's badge photo is terrible. It's like a rite of passage. They issued him a laptop new, fast, the kind he'd dreamed about but never been able to justify purchasing. A phone, access credentials, a desk assignment on the 24th floor. You'll start Monday, 8 a.m., Jennifer said. Dress code is business casual. Dr. Moore will be your direct supervisor. He'll handle your onboarding and training schedule. Any questions? 1,000 questions. Would he be good enough? Would the team accept him? What if he failed? What if Victoria had made a mistake? No, Daniel said. Thank you. Dr. Moore appeared in the doorway. The architect looked different somehow, the earlier defensiveness gone, replaced by something more complicated. Respect, maybe. Or at least acknowledgement. Harper, he said. Walk with me. They went to the operations center. The crisis had passed, but people were still there. Reviewing logs, documenting what had happened, strengthening safeguards. Marcus waved when he saw Daniel. I was wrong about you, Dr. Moore said abruptly. About your qualifications, your experience. I made assumptions based on credentials and ignored competence. That's a mistake I shouldn't have made. You were protecting your team, Daniel said. Your work. That's not wrong. It is when it makes you blind. Dr. Moore turned to face him fully. You'll be working under me. I won't make it easy just because you saved our contract. You'll need to prove yourself every day. Learn our systems. Earn the team's trust. But I'll give you a fair chance. More than I gave you this morning. That's all I'm asking for. Good. Dr. Moore almost smiled. Welcome to the team. Try not to make the rest of us look too bad. Daniel left the building at 5:47 p.m. The city was shifting into evening, streetlights beginning to glow. Office workers flooding the sidewalks toward buses and train stations. The air smelled like exhaust and someone's food cart and the particular smell of a city at the end of a workday. He'd signed papers, read through the employee handbook, been issued a security badge with his photo, his name, and the words North Vale Technologies in blue letters. The badge felt heavy in his pocket, solid and real. The bus was late. Daniel stood at the stop, watching traffic, replaying the day in fragments. Dr. Moore's skepticism. The error logs scrolling red. Victoria's calm decision to shut down millions of dollars of active systems based on the word of a stranger. The moment when the system came back online and everyone had exhaled together, his phone buzzed. Mrs. Chen, Mia's getting worried. He texted back. On my way. Traffic, 20 minutes. The bus came. Daniel sat in the back, his reflection ghostly in the darkening window. $68,000 a year. Health insurance. Dental. A 401k with employer matching. Paid vacation. Words that had seemed like fairy tales that morning. He got off at Fletcher Avenue and walked the 3 blocks to the apartment building. The sidewalks were cracked, weeds growing through. Someone's car had a flat tire. The streetlight on the corner still flickered like it had for months. His neighborhood, familiar and worn and somehow more precious now. Mrs. Chen's door opened before he could knock. Mr. Harper. How did... Mia burst past her, wrapping her arms around Daniel's waist. You're late. I thought something bad happened. I thought maybe the interview was bad, and you were sad, and didn't want to tell me. He knelt down, pulling her close, breathing in her strawberry shampoo and the slight smell of playground dirt. I'm sorry, Bug. The interview ran long. There were complications. She pulled back, studying his face with those careful brown eyes. Did you get it? The question hung in the air. Daniel could see Mrs. Chen in the doorway, hands clasped together, hoping. Could see Mia trying not to hope too much, protecting herself from disappointment. Yeah, he said. Yeah, I got it. Mia's eyes went wide. Really? Really? I start Monday. She hugged him again, tighter this time, and he felt her small body shake with something between laughter and tears. Mrs. Chen smiled from the doorway, her eyes bright. Does this mean we don't have to move? Mia whispered against his shoulder. The question broke something in Daniel's chest. She'd been afraid. Of course she'd been afraid. She'd heard him on the phone with the landlord. Heard the worry in his voice even when he tried to hide it. Felt the weight of his stress even when he smiled. We don't have to move, he said. We can stay right here, in this apartment, in your school, with your friends. Everything stays the same, except it gets a little easier now. They thanked Mrs. Chen Daniel, promising to bring her the overdue payment on Friday with some extra for her patients, and went inside. The apartment looked exactly the same. Same cramped kitchen, same worn furniture, same water stain on the ceiling from last year's leak. But warmer somehow. More solid. Daniel made dinner spaghetti with sauce from a jar. Garlic bread, the salad Mia always picked at, but he served anyway because vegetables mattered. They ate at the small table by the window, Mia chattering about school, about the art project she was working on, about how Tommy Anderson said his dad worked in a tall building too, and now her dad did also, and wasn't that cool? Really cool. Daniel agreed, twirling spaghetti on his fork. After dinner, after bath time, after 2 bedtime stories and 1 song, Daniel sat on the edge of Mia's bed, watching her fight sleep the way she always did. Daddy, she said, her voice thick and drowsy. Is it going to be okay now? Really okay? He smoothed her hair back, the way Sarah used to. It's going to be better. Not perfect, not easy, but better. We'll have enough money for rent, for food, for new shoes when you need them, maybe even for that science museum trip your class is planning. Really? Really. She nodded, satisfied, and her eyes finally closed. Within minutes, her breathing had evened out into sleep. Daniel sat there a while longer, watching her chest rise and fall, her rabbit tucked under one arm. He thought about Sarah, about how proud she'd be, how scared she'd been at the end, worried about leaving them, about how Daniel would manage. He wished she could know, wished he could tell her. "We made it. We're going to be okay." The apartment creaked around him, familiar sounds of old buildings settling. Daniel went to the kitchen, made coffee he didn't really want, sat at the table with the employment contract Victoria's assistant had printed for him. He read through it again, the salary, the benefits, the probation terms, the non-disclosure agreements, the responsibilities, support operations team in troubleshooting, system optimization, documentation, and crisis response. Crisis response. He'd had about an hour of that today. At the bottom, a line for his signature. He'd signed it already, but he looked at it now, his name in his own handwriting, official and binding. Daniel Harper, Junior Systems Analyst, Northvale Technologies. Tomorrow he'd call the landlord, arrange to pay the overdue rent with something left over. He'd go to the thrift store, buy 2 more dress shirts and a pair of proper work shoes. Sunday, he'd prep Mia, explain that he'd be working regular hours now, Monday through Friday, that Mrs. Chen wouldn't have to watch her as much. Monday, he'd show up at Northvale Technologies at 7:45 a.m. early, because he'd learned that being early mattered, ready to prove Victoria's gamble hadn't been a mistake, ready to work harder than everyone around him, ready to earn his place. But tonight, in this moment, Daniel just sat in his quiet apartment and let himself feel something he'd almost forgotten how to recognize. Hope. Not the desperate hope of lottery tickets and long shots. Not the hollow hope of empty promises and maybes. But the solid, earned hope of a man who'd walked into a room where everyone saw his limitations and walked out with a chance to prove they were wrong. He finished his coffee, rinsed the cup, checked that the front door was locked. His work laptop sat on the counter, ancient, slow, held together with hope and stubbornness and electrical tape. Monday, he'd get a new one. New tools, new challenges, new responsibilities. Daniel turned off the kitchen light and stood in the darkness of his apartment, listening to the familiar sounds, the refrigerator humming, the distant traffic, the settling of old building bones, the steady breathing of his daughter in the next room. The same sounds as every other night, but somehow, in some way he couldn't quite name, everything had changed. Not because he'd been rescued, not because someone had taken pity on him, but because when it mattered, when the room full of experts was frozen by panic and professional pride, he'd seen clearly. He'd spoken up, he'd been right, and someone had listened. That was worth more than the salary, more than the title, more than the security badge in his pocket. Someone, Victoria Hale, CEO of a company worth hundreds of millions, had looked past the paper, past the credentials, past the assumptions, and seen what he could actually do, had trusted his competence over his resume, had believed in his potential over his past. Daniel checked on Mia one last time. She'd kicked off her blanket, clutched her rabbit close, smiled slightly in her sleep at some dream he'd never know about. He covered her gently, kissed her forehead, whispered, "We made it, bug." Then he went to his own room. The contract sat on his dresser, official and real. He'd frame it tomorrow, not to brag, but to remember that sometimes, on ordinary Thursdays in borrowed suits, impossible things could happen. That the person everyone dismissed could be the person everyone needed. That credentials opened doors, but competence kept them open. That sometimes, just sometimes, trying your best was exactly enough. Daniel set his alarm for 6 a.m. Monday would come soon enough, with its challenges and its skeptics and its hard work ahead. But he'd faced worse. He'd survived worse. He'd built a life from nothing after Sarah died. Taught himself an entire profession in midnight hours, kept his daughter safe and fed and loved through years that tried to break them. And now, finally, he had something more than survival to work toward. He had a future, And for a man like Daniel Harper, who'd built everything from nothing, who'd turned loss into learning and failure into fuel, who'd kept going when every door seemed closed, a future was all he'd ever needed. The city lights glowed through his window. Somewhere across town, Northvale Technologies stood against the night sky, 37 floors of glass and steel and possibility. On Monday, Daniel would walk through those doors not as an applicant, not as a mistake, but as someone who belonged. But tonight, he was just a father who could finally tell his daughter the truth she'd been afraid to believe. Things were going to be okay, not because of luck, not because of pity, but because when it mattered most, he'd known what to do, and that knowledge, earned through years of quiet work in small rooms on forgotten projects, had finally been enough.